Before the beginning of every year, Tony Marioghae, through the inspiration of God, gives bold, prophetic revelations of future events. He has done this faithfully for many years in the crossover services to glorify God, edify believers worldwide, and to warn nations and governments of impending challenges which could be avoided through godly policies and prayer. He has also been used mightily by God as a messenger of hope in midst of fear, uncertainty, and despair. Towards the end of December 2013, before hundreds of people and thousands of viewers worldwide, Bishop Tony gave some prophecies for 2014, which was immediately downloaded on YouTube and Facebook.
Today I'll be giving some prophetic words for 2014, which God has given to me that concerns individuals, nations, people.
All the prophecies were fulfilled 12 months after the prophetic utterances. Here are some of the outstanding ones.
Let us pray against the outbreak of deadly diseases in different parts of the world in 2014. Significant technological breakthroughs will be made in 2014 to enhance lives. Asia, Europe, and USA will play vital roles.
Significant breakthroughs were made in 2014 as the world battled frantically to eliminate the deadly Ebola virus, which claimed thousands of lives in Africa and later spread to some countries in Europe and America. Drugs and vaccines were developed in the USA, Europe, and Asia to treat Ebola victims. The Ebola crisis was subsequently declared by the World Health Organization as the worst epidemic in the 21st century. USA and other nations also made gains in other areas of science and technology to enhance the quality of lives.
This morning, I am declaring the current outbreak of Ebola virus disease a public health emergency of international concern.
According to figures released by the World Health Organization Friday, Ebola has sickened more than 16,000 people, of whom nearly 7,000 have died. Sierra Leone is now bearing the brunt of the 8-month-old outbreak. In the other hard-hit countries, Liberia and Guinea, the World Health Organization says infection rates are stabilizing or declining, but in Sierra Leone, they're soaring. The country has been reporting around 400 to 500 new cases each week for several weeks. Anthony Banbury, head of the UN Mission for Ebola Emergency Response, said in an interview with the Associated Press, those cases are concentrated in the capital Freetown, its surrounding areas, and the northern Port Loko district, which together account for about 65% of Sierra Leone's new infections.
Through the concerted effort of our healthcare professionals, the World Health Organization, and our international partners, we have been able to contain the Ebola virus disease, and we can confidently say that Nigeria is today Ebola-free.
We did hear from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Tony Fauci from the NIH. He was over here at the White House as well, and he actually gave some pretty optimistic news about an Ebola vaccine. He said it's in the first phase of testing right now. They'll have the final results by December as to whether or not they want to move to an extended trial period, and they think that could occur in the first quarter of next year.
Normally, it would take years of human trials before a completely new vaccine was approved for use. But the research here in Oxford is being fast-tracked at an astonishing rate. And all being well, by the end of the year, around 10,000 doses of the jab will be available to immunize health workers in West Africa.
Ishmael is a coded word for something that I'm sure you guys know. I went out to write the full thing, but God told me, He said, you need wisdom to pass on some message, so this one is coded. Let him who has ears hear. Ishmael will continue to spread worldwide with fear and destruction, but it will be a divided house from its root, with groups turning against each other. This will be a big snare to Europe and other nations.
Ishmael, the prophet's code name for Islamic terrorists, struck deadly blows in different parts of the world, leading to the death of thousands of people and the destruction of properties worth billions of dollars. On the 17th of December 2014, the Taliban carried a deadly terrorist attack in Pakistan, brutally killing 145 innocent students. This happened a day after a lone jihadist carried a similar attack in Sydney, Australia. This year, Boko Haram kidnapped and enslaved 200 harmless Christian school students, sacked towns, and bombed many places in the nation, wasting countless lives and properties. The most brutal of these terror groups, ISIS, declared a caliphate after seizing large territories in Iraq and Syria. Thousands of people were killed, maimed, enslaved, and displaced in this bloodthirsty drive to promote the group's medieval ideology. Ethnic minority Christian women were captured and sold as sex slaves, while their husbands and male relatives were killed in the most violent and barbaric manner. Western journalists and aid workers were captured and beheaded with impunity, thus perpetrating some of the most demonic crimes against humanity.
The army officer showed us that the kids in the auditorium, they were having a big class there. There was a lot of them. They were on chairs stacked up in the auditorium. The gunmen came in there, guns blazing, and the kids tried to get out. Some tried to hide under their seats. Some tried to get out through the doors, and the army officer showed us by the doors on both sides where the children had crowded around trying to get out. And the Taliban just simply walked up to them and gunned them down. 100 children died in that one hall alone, he told us. The carpets there literally and absolutely soaked with blood. We went to the administrative area where the Taliban sort of made their last stand. They killed the principal of the school. The deputy principal only escaped by hiding in a toilet, even though they threw hand grenades at her. It's a devastating scene in there.
An American journalist has been beheaded by ISIS terrorists. A video showing the horrific killing and its gruesome aftermath was released on the internet a short while ago, along with a message to the United States to end its intervention in Iraq. The victim was freelance journalist James Foley, who was kidnapped in 2012 while covering the war in Syria. In the video, he is seen kneeling next to a man dressed in black. Foley reads a message, presumably scripted in detail by his captors, that his real killer is America. The video, which is obviously too gruesome for us to show you, then shows Foley's beheading. After that, it shows another American journalist also dressed in orange and kneeling, and that man is believed to be Steve Sotloff, a contributor to Time magazine who was kidnapped.
These attacks fit with the general pattern of Boko Haram attacks. Recently, Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shekau claimed that, according to his interpretation of Islam, it was acceptable to kidnap girls and use them as spoils in war. Potentially, they are going to be married as wives of Boko Haram members in northeastern Nigeria and be used as cooks, porters, and scouts. Meanwhile, the attack in Abuja comes less than 1 year ahead of the next presidential elections, and this will force Nigerian politicians to focus more on Boko Haram, and this could end up leading to the spoiling of next year's elections and ruining the democratic hopes for Nigeria.
Nigeria and Philippines will record economic gains despite internal challenges, but pray for the trickle-down effect on the people. China will do well economically in 2014, but will face some domestic problems and natural calamities. Brazil will host a successful World Cup with some slight challenges.
Nigeria and the Philippines. recorded economic gains despite internal challenges. Nigeria became the biggest economy in Africa with a robust GDP, while the Philippines' economy was rated as the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia. China did relatively well in 2014, but faced domestic challenges in the mainland and pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, which sparked international concerns. Despite the huge protests against the government decision to host the World Cup by angry citizens, Brazil eventually hosted a successful World Football Tournament.
Nigeria is now the 26th largest economy in the world, with South Africa estimated to stand at around 30. Rich in oil and gas, this West African country also worked very hard at growing its other industries. The film industry, which was practically non-existent in 1990, now contributes over $5 billion per year.
The nation's current GDP now stands at $510 billion, and that's official. These figures came today during the rebasing of the nation's economy at the event where the finance minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, describes not only as historic, but an exercise that will bring about accurate data in the measurement of the nation's development. During the unveiling of the nation's GDP in Abuja, the capital city, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said that Nigeria is now the 26th largest economy in the world, ahead of countries like Austria and just behind Argentina.
The Philippine economy has expanded by 6.4% in the second quarter, with the government optimistic the country will reach its growth target for 2014. Christine de Guzman tells us more from Makati. Hi, Chris, go ahead.
That's right, Mai. The Philippine economy grew by 6.4% in the second quarter, nearly a percentage point higher than the first quarter growth. However, the expansion is significantly lower than the 7.9% growth recorded in the same period last year. The industry sector posted the highest growth among the three major industries, with a 7.8% performance. The services sector followed at 6%, which was a slight decline from its first quarter output. Agriculture trailed at 3.6%, but the sector rebounded from a contraction in the second quarter last year and even performed better than the less than 1% growth in the first quarter this year.
China is now the biggest contributor to global growth, and it's predicted to continue building up its output. The IMF says this trend is indefinite. Now, for more analysis, let's speak to New York-based economist Max Fradd-Wolf. Welcome to the program, Max. China's economy now tops America's, but only in that one main index, which is purchasing power parity.
Riot police deployed in Hong Kong Occupy Central movement to remove peaceful protesters. Tens of thousands of people rallied outside Hong Kong's government offices Saturday night in protest of Beijing's decision to rule out a fully democratic election in Hong Kong in 2017.
Thousands of people have hit the streets across Brazil on Thursday in a series of protests against the World Cup, as well as strikes and marches aimed at a government that people say has spent way too much money on a sporting event and not enough on everything from salaries to hospitals. Now this evening what we've seen are big signs saying FIFA go home. Now this just caps off tons of events around the country. Police strike in Recife, also a World Cup city, that has left the city vulnerable to crime and looting. Here in Sao Paulo, 5,000 teachers took to the streets to ask for higher wages. Now another group demanding lower income housing also blocked main avenues and marched all the way to the Arena Sao Paulo, which is where the inaugural game of the World Cup will be played on June 12, Brazil against Croatia. And they, like everyone here, says they're going to be back out on the streets every week until the end of the World Cup.
The month-long festival of football is about to begin.
The players have prepared for their entire careers for this moment.
You can see what all of this means to them.
'Cause you're a sky full of stars.
huge expectation on Brazil.
I'm gonna give you my heart.
Stand by for high anxiety and tremendous excitement.
Neymar, it seems, cannot be stopped. Messi, majestic at the Maracanã.
Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and some Middle East countries will experience internal conflicts and violence, while others in the same region will experience peace and economic gains.
Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and some Middle East countries like Yemen experience violent internal conflicts, but other nations in the same region experience peace and economic prosperity.
The scorched skeleton of a prison bus, all that remains in the aftermath of another deadly attack in Iraq.
In Iraq, ISIS militants continue to gain ground, this time seizing the country's largest dam, an oil field, and several northern towns in a major victory over Kurdish forces. Iraqi state television reports Kurdish Peshmerga troops withdrew without a fight as Sunni fighters captured the Mosul dam Sunday. It could allow ISIS to use water as a weapon to flood major cities or control its supply to hundreds of thousands of people.
People of Egypt believe that the revolution has been stolen from them. If we just look back, they had a military dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak. They got rid of him. They had 1 year of a state which they didn't like. They voted for, but many people didn't like it. But the end result now, they have a military regime. They have Sisi, who is, in my view, he is even worse than Mubarak, let alone what the Egyptians think. He's doing all the things that even Mubarak couldn't do in terms of putting people in prison, in terms of prohibiting people from even demonstrating. It's still going through turbulent water. I think probably Sisi at the end of the year will probably regret having accepted to become the president.
He wants to attack the U.S., seemingly unconcerned he could be hit by an American drone.
This is quite an extraordinary video. The leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Nasser al-Wahishi, who's also the #2 of Al-Qaeda worldwide, addressing over 100 fighters somewhere in Yemen, taking a big risk in doing this.
An advance into Yemen's Sunni Muslim heartland by Shiite Houthi fighters has galvanized support for Al-Qaeda among some Sunnis, deepening the religious hue of the country's many conflicts with potential consequences well beyond its borders. Yemen's tribal, regional, and political divisions were widened by the rapid fall of the capital Sana'a to Houthi fighters on September 21st after weeks of protest against the government and its decision to cut fuel subsidies. The Houthi expansion has created a sectarian problem, said Bassam al-Barak, a Sunni Muslim resident of the religiously mixed Sana'a, attending a protest by local activists held every week to demand the Houthis quit the capital.
The U.S. economy will begin to recover slowly despite internal strife. Likewise, Japan, Germany, and Spain. Canada and Australia will record significant economic growth, but the economic policies will not be widely accepted.
The American economy improved significantly, and the nation remained the largest economy in the world and one of the best economies in 2014. Forbes magazine praised President Barack Obama's economic recovery policies. Joblessness in America fell to its lowest in a decade. Germany, Spain, Canada, and Australia had economic breakthroughs, while Japan opted for a total overhaul of her economic policies as the nation came out of recession but later relapsed due to outdated economic laws.
I'd like to see 250,000 jobs created every month, but I'd also like to see better jobs created.
I think that's the story. The story behind the story. What is that?
The story behind the story is that so many of the jobs coming back have paid less and had fewer benefits than the jobs we lost in the recession. So the jobless recovery, we're starting to get those jobs back, but they're low-wage jobs, which is why the minimum wage debate, the unemployment benefits insurance debate is so key, why the job situation is still so political and critical.
And now to the economy. You know, President Obama's been on the campaign trail for Democrats trying to talk up the improving job situation. They announced this week that unemployment fell below 6% for the first time since the beginning of the recession. There it is, 5.9%.
And we talked about how President Obama has achieved what Mitt Romney said would take him his entire first term, 6% unemployment, in only 2 years. And Romney said he would need to get rid of Obamacare to do it. President Obama doing it in half the time without getting rid of Obamacare. And I stumbled across an article in Forbes magazine, on the Forbes website. First and foremost, Bob Detrick astutely says that this economy is better than the economy under the Reagan recovery, which is often touted by the right as just this amazing shrine that we should be praying to in terms of economic recoveries. Bob Detrick says, President Reagan has long been considered the best economic president. So we compared his performance dealing with the oil-induced recession of the 80s with that of President Obama during this Great Recession. President Obama's job creation kept unemployment from peaking at as high a level as President Reagan, and it promoted people into the workforce faster than President Reagan.
The Spanish government is planning to revise its growth forecasts for the country for this year and next. That word comes from Economy Minister Luis de Guindos, who says GDP is likely to expand by 1.5% this year, up from a previous estimate of 1.2%. For next year, he's talking about 2%, up from 1.8%. It's the latest display of confidence in the strength of the Spanish economy's recovery, despite continued sky-high unemployment. Madrid is due to publish its official economic projections for the next few years in September as part of next year's budget proposal.
Later in the day, students met with Andrea Lindgren, an economic officer from the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, to discuss Japan's economy.
It's in our interest for Japan to have a strong economy.
Larger social issues such as women's rights and economic policies emerged, providing a lesson in how connected everything truly is.
One of the issues that the Japanese are facing right now in their economy is the shortage of workers. Their birth rate has been falling for a long time, and the population is decreasing, but the workforce itself is actually decreasing. And one way that the Prime Minister at present has proposed to address that issue is by promoting policies that encourage women to stay in the workforce. There's a lot of women that are educated and enter the workforce. However, as they get married and have children, a lot take an exit ramp and don't come back because of some of the corporate culture of working long hours and shortage of support such as daycare facilities. The Prime Minister has made a top priority for increasing the number of facilities, reducing the waiting list. A lot of the waiting lists can be 2 years long. This is an area where the Prime Minister's policies could really increase the supply of labor in this country, so we'll see where that goes.
Let us pray against natural disasters in Asian countries, including Philippines, Pakistan, and India. These include floods, storms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions.
Natural disasters hit certain Asian countries like Philippines, Pakistan, India, Japan, and China. Thousands of people died, and properties worth hundreds of millions of dollars were destroyed.
Hi, Robin. Well, howling wind and driving rain still. It has been unrelentless through the night and all through today. We're now well into the afternoon here on Sunday. In fact, tons of rain's just dropping on me right now too, Robin. It's incredible. It just hasn't stopped, and that's the major concern. You use the word slowly. It is moving slowly across the Philippines, but don't let that word deceive you. Slowly means potentially more destruction, and with it, of course, more heavy rainfall as it moves through. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but it is driving through us here, and that is a major concern, because what that means is flooding potentially. It is coming right at us at some speed and some force. I mean, I'm going to step aside for a second, Robin, and let you just absorb what's going on behind me. We can barely see the city below us. We're on a hill.
Now we are at the end of the monsoon season here, and actually across these areas of northern Pakistan and northern India, we should already be in the dry time of the year. As of September 1st, the monsoon should start that retreat away from these areas. But notice in the satellite image, we still have a lot of moisture coming in here, especially across northern parts of India, and it has been quite serious. Let's go ahead and roll the pictures here. Let's go ahead and start with India first of all. And these grainy images give us just a great view, unfortunately, of what is happening in this area. The water is rising quickly across many rivers. There have been several dozen people that have been killed, according to Indian officials, and you can see the struggle for people in this area. These homes, have been completely destroyed. They've lost their crops. They've lost their animals, and of course, in many cases, there's been a serious loss of life. People risking their lives to try to save whatever they can, and you can see that it's not only in the smaller villages, but also as we head into the more populated areas, into the larger cities, the towns, the businesses. Schools had to be shut down in many cases because the rain has been so relentless. The next video is from wow, that's pretty impressive there too. This next video right here is from Lahore, Pakistan, and here you've had one of the wettest days on record. More than 240 millimeters of rain happened in the last 24 hours ending yesterday. Your monthly average is about 98 millimeters for the entire month of September. So you had almost, what, 1.5 times what you would normally get the entire month in just a matter of hours. And of course, this is the result. As you saw from our satellite perspective, a lot drier for you there in Lahore. Islamabad is the one that had 240 millimeters of rain, and that's pretty significant. The rain ending here across northern Pakistan, but it is expected to continue as we head across northern parts of India.
Typhoon Fanphone is gathering strength in the western Pacific Ocean, with projections showing that it may intensify significantly, likely to super typhoon status before veering toward mainland Japan by October 5th. Computer model simulations Wednesday show that the storm will likely intensify over the next few days while moving northwest toward extreme southwest Japan or the open East China Sea.
The tremor registered an intensity of 6- on the Japanese scale of 0 to 7 in parts of Nagano Prefecture. An intensity of 5 was recorded in neighboring Niigata Prefecture. In Nagano Prefecture, landslides blocked some roads at Hakuba village. Local officials report that at least 4 residential houses have collapsed. 1 person was rescued and 4 people are still trapped inside.
Well, so far the impact is unclear because it's very early days, Hala, but this enormous typhoon, super typhoon, hit the landfall, sort of skirted Hainan, the northern part of that island in southern China, about 2 hours ago. So it's been lashing it with strong winds and obviously heavy rain. The Chinese authorities have called this a red alert typhoon. That's the strongest level that China has. And it did seem like they were scrambling to get everything in order before this typhoon hit. There had been scores of trains cancelled, of course, and planes delayed. They also took the steps to make sure that there were no large ships in the region of that island. It's also worth remembering that this area, Hala, is a very popular tourist destination for both Chinese and international tourists.
Let us pray against natural calamities in Europe, Latin America, some parts of Africa. Some African nations will experience internal crisis if the people do not act with caution, wisdom, and prayer.
Europe, Latin America, and some parts of Africa also experienced some calamities in 2014. Civil wars broke out in South Sudan and the Central African Republic, respectively. Political unrest in Burkina Faso, due to power struggle, almost degenerated into a civil war. These crises claimed many lives.
Stranded. The growing catastrophe is the worst flooding in a century, triggers landslides, kills dozens, and forces tens of thousands from their homes. Tonight, at least 25 people are dead after the worst flooding in more than a century in Eastern Europe. Tens of thousands of people were forced from their homes after more than 4 months' worth of rain fell in just a single day. NBC's Duncan Golestani has the latest from London.
For thousands of people across Bosnia, this has become the only way to safety. From rooftops and balconies, young and old are pulled onto helicopters. There is a moment of relief before the next precious cargo arrives, a baby saved from the floodwater below.
We use small boats to cross the Hualaga River that bursts its banks, which floods the nearby neighborhood. Footage filmed on Monday showed trucks stranded along a main road due to the landslides. In the Argentinian city of Luyan, west of Buenos Aires, neighborhoods and fields were submerged with flood water. Traffic was slow on some of the highways due to the road being partially flooded on Tuesday.
Concern is growing about the situation in South Sudan, in the international community, in the United Nations, of course, in the U.S. as well. The latest that we're hearing is that the fighting there is both getting worse and is spreading, especially in the north of the country, which is where most of the oil fields are, which are the main source of revenue for that country. The latest that we're hearing is that there's battles in the Upper Nile state, especially in the main town there called Malakal, between rebel forces and government forces. Also,
President Blaise Compaoré of Burkina Faso has declared a state of emergency and dissolved the government after protesters stormed and set fire to the parliament, trying to disrupt a vote which, if it had gone through, would have amended the constitution so as to grant him another term in office. He has also said that he has taken that constitutional reform vote off the agenda, but that he is still the president. Protesters clearly have had enough of the strongman politics of a leader who professes to be democratic, and President Compaoré has been in office for 27 years, taking power in a bloody coup in 1987.
Some shocking things will be revealed in the Philippines in 2014, which will create room for subsequent reforms.
The anti-corruption war of President Benigno Aquino's administration in the Philippines revealed many hidden things in 2014 and also raised big controversies as prophesied by Bishop Tony.
Vice President Jejomar Binay faces plunder accusations for an allegedly overpriced multi-million peso parking building in Makati City. The complaint filed before the ombudsman says the contract for the Makati parking building was supposed to have amounted to only 245.56 million pesos but was overpriced by more than 1.314 billion pesos. The final contract price was pegged at 1.56 billion pesos. The complainants say Binay and his son, incumbent Mayor Junjun Binay, quote, violated every rule in construction manuals and government procedures in pushing for a project that was grossly overpriced and funded by various loans irregularly passed through the City Council through supplemental budgets for 5 years.
3 senators charged in the biggest corruption scandal in recent history opposed the Ombudsman's request for the creation of special courts to try their cases. Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales earlier asked the Supreme Court to create special divisions in the Sandigan Bayan, citing the special circumstances of the cases and the need to speed up the trial. But Senator Enrile says this puts an impartial trial at risk. He says, quote, the highly charged and biased environment surrounding the cases gives the impression the High Court has, quote, joined the clamor for the condemnation. In a comment filed before the court, Senator Jinggoy Estrada says creating special divisions shows the administration is targeting the opposition. Senator Revilla says the Ombudsman's request is, quote, discriminatory as it is unwarranted. He says the proposal violates the Equal Protection Clause in the Constitution that guarantees all the accused speedy justice regardless of the, quote, magnitude and complexity of the case.
Let us pray against wildfire and floods in Australia, USA 2014.
The United States of America and Australia experienced fire outbreaks and flood disasters in 2014.
Raging on overnight, at least 8 fires in San Diego County consuming home after home. Smoke even visible from space as the blazes ravage over 10,000 acres.
All right, it's time to go, you guys.
Evacuations now called for nearly 16,000 residences as the flames turned fatal. Fire crews discovering a badly burned body in a Carlsbad encampment.
I can't believe the scene here. We're at Bristol Park, around Bristol Creek, and this area was the hardest hit, the highest water, and the streets are lined with cars. Literally, there is more traffic in this neighborhood than anywhere else in Pensacola because people have come here to help. People that don't even know the people here, but they saw the pictures on TV and they saw the damage here.
Hailstones the size of golf balls smashed through homes, and winds ripped roofs off apartment buildings. Residents say they were given little or no warning of the approaching storm.
Yeah, it's all gone, you know, so it's pretty much all destroyed, you know. Some of us have been lucky down the other end to have a few dry rooms, but, you know, for the most part, everything in the living room and bedrooms and the balcony just gone.
On the roads, visibility was heavily reduced, and in the city centre, motorists had no choice but to pull over and wait for the weather system to pass.
President Barack Obama will face tests that will define the final term of his presidency. His policy will affect the world. Let's pray that he makes godly policies.
President Barack Obama signed an executive order in late 2014, which offers residency and work permit to over 5 million illegal immigrants in the U.S., which caused thousands of people joy, but triggered small protests in different parts of the USA. This was the boldest immigration executive order ever signed by any American president in modern history.
After U.S. President Barack Obama announced plans to push forward on immigration reform, he made a trip to Las Vegas. He spoke at the same high school where he addressed immigration reform almost 2 years ago, and to sign his executive action offering work permits and a reprieve of deportation to millions of immigrants.
So we're not giving up. We're going to keep on working with members of Congress to make permanent reform a reality. But until that day comes, there are actions that I have the legal authority to take that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. And this morning, I began to take some of those actions.
He's damaging the presidency itself. President Obama has turned a deaf ear to the people that he was elected and we were elected to serve. But we will not do that. In the days ahead, the People's House will rise to this challenge. We will not stand idle as the president undermines the rule of law in our country and places lives at risk.
Amid the political rivalry, it's important to assess what Americans feel about the president's plan. CCTV's Nathan King takes a look at the arguments on each side of the debate.
Obama, escucha, estamos en la lucha.
Outside the White House this week, there have been rallies of strong support for the US president's immigration reform. Less vocal, but also here are the opponents. They say the president's announcement has clouded the fact that the US already has a generous and legal immigration policy.
Let us pray against terror networks worldwide in 2014 and also pray against air, sea, and land disasters.
We witnessed terrible air, sea, and land disasters in 2014. The most significant air tragedies befell Malaysian Airlines, the Asian oil-rich nation's leading aviation company. Suffered a terrible economic loss when two of the commercial airliners' jumbo jets crashed within a few months. Hundreds of passengers perished. Air disasters also occurred in Africa, Asia, Europe, USA, and Bahamas the same year. Another South Korean ferry sank. Philippines also experienced a similar tragedy.
Malaysian airline Boeing 777 flight that was travelling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It is reported to have crashed in eastern Ukraine. And the belief at this point is that all 295 people on board, 280 people, 15 crew, have perished in that flight.
This is CNN Breaking News.
This is Piers Morgan Live. Breaking news tonight. A Malaysia Airlines plane carrying 239 people bound for Beijing is missing. According to a statement from the airline, air traffic control lost contact with flight MH370 from Kuala Lumpur at 2:40 a.m.
Well, like you mentioned, some very tense moments at Philadelphia International Airport. Here's what we know from authorities. U.S. Airways Flight 1702 was headed to Fort Lauderdale from Philadelphia, and an airline spokesperson tells CNN the tire of the Airbus A320 blew on takeoff. Now, we're getting some conflicting reports here because the Philadelphia airport tweeted out that nose gear of the plane collapsed. We're also getting that same information from the FAA that reportedly there was some nose gear collapse.
And we begin with breaking news. Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2 crashed in a California desert during a test flight. Of the two pilots on board, one died, the other suffered major injuries. You can see the area there where the accident occurred. The spaceship accident comes just 3 days after the catastrophic launch of the Antares rocket in Virginia.
Now in the bulletin, back to our breaking news this hour. A light plane crashed within the last hour at Moscow's Vnukovo airport. All people aboard reportedly have died.
That deadly plane crash, a private jet going down while landing in the Bahamas, killing all 9 people on board, including a prominent pastor and his wife.
Here's what we know at this point this morning from Africa. An Air Algiers flight from the West African country of Burkina Faso to Algeria lost contact with controllers and has disappeared from radar. Now, the aircraft is an MD-83 that was being operated by a Spanish company for Air Algiers, and on board a total of 116 people. The breakdown, 110 passengers and a crew of 6.
Air Asia Flight 8501 discovered overnight. That search effort sadly now becoming a recovery effort. The debris field found just 6 miles from the plane's last point of contact.
It went down in shallow waters. Parts of the plane, luggage, and victims are now being pulled from the water this morning. And now investigators are going to start looking for answers about what exactly went wrong here. We already have some early clues. The victims were not wearing life jackets, and the plane appears to be largely intact.
Nearly 300 still missing in South Korean ferry accident. Rescuers and families of those aboard the stricken South Korean car ferry that sank off the country's southwest coast on Wednesday haven't given up hope of finding more people alive among the hundreds still unaccounted for.
Meanwhile, the death toll from the sinking of MV Maharlika off southern Leyte has risen to 6. This with the reported recovery of 3 more fatalities. The vessel reportedly sank due to mechanical trouble. More from Noel Perfecto.
Philippine Coast Guard is on its toes on the search and rescue operations for the passengers of MV Maharlika 2.
European air and naval crews continued search and rescue efforts overnight Sunday and into Monday morning for more than 100 passengers stranded on a burning ferry in the Adriatic Sea off the western coast of Greece. As of early Monday morning, the Italian Navy says more than 300 people have been pulled to safety from the ferry, but about 150 remain stuck while rough seas and freezing conditions have made rescue operations difficult.
Let us pray against the tragic death of some influential world personalities, especially entertainers, in 2014.
Some influential personalities and entertainers died tragically in 2014 in fulfillment of Bishop Tony's prophecies. The CEO of a top oil-producing company died in a plane crash in Russia, while a popular American rap artist killed himself after shooting his wife to death. A young celebrated cricket player died in Australia towards the end of the year due to an unfortunate accident, while a great American entertainer, Joan Rivers' sudden death brought sorrow to the entertainment industry. The tragic death of Miles Monroe and 8 others and other prominent people in different parts of the world confirms the power of prophecy. When God speaks, he does not lie. His words are true and accurate, but we have the power to stop the fulfillment of negative prophecies and avoid tragedies through faith, obedience, and prayer.